I used to think family dinners were sacred. A moment where everything wrong with the world melted away in the warmth of a home-cooked meal, shared laughter, and the smell of Mom's pot roast. I clung to that idea for years, even as the evidence chipped away at it bit by bit, until it finally shattered one Sunday night in December. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Maya, I'm 29, single, and apparently the designated emotional punching bag of my family. To them, I've always been the baby, which sounds cute until you realize it means every decision I make is second-guessed, every achievement overshadowed, and every effort underappreciated. I don't have a husband. I don't have kids. What I do have is a demanding job in the city, a one-bedroom apartment I pay for myself, and a solid track record of showing up for the people I love, especially when they don't show up for me. I help when someone's sick. I help when someone's broke. I'm the helper, the reliable one, the one who listens, drives across town at midnight, and foots the bill when no one else can. My parents, Robert and Linda, retired 5 years ago. Dad was a high school math teacher, Mom a nurse. They talk often about how tired they are, how underappreciated they feel by kids these days, and how hard it is to make ends meet. I've sent money quietly, birthday gifts that doubled as grocery funds, surprise spa day, packages that were really just stress relief in disguise. Never once did I throw it in their faces. I just wanted to be a good daughter. I just wanted them to see me as enough. Then there's Diana, my older sister, the golden girl. Married her college sweetheart, Tom, and now they have 3 boys, Ethan, Mason, and Logan. Her life is loud, chaotic, Pinterest-worthy in all the ways mine isn't. She lives 15 minutes from our parents' house and calls Mom every day, mostly to offload her stress. She's not cruel. She's not evil. She's just so consumed with her own chaos that she forgets I have mine too. But that's always been the dynamic. I'm not bitter. At least I wasn't. That Sunday morning, my phone lit up with a message from Mom. Hey sweetie, if you're free, come for dinner tonight. We miss you. Simple. Straightforward. No guilt trip. No obligations. Just an invitation that for a second felt warm. I hadn't been home in 3 weeks. Work had been brutal, and the idea of sitting at a familiar table with familiar faces felt comforting. I decided to go all out. I picked up a bottle of Pinot Noir, Dad's favorite. I baked lemon tarts from scratch, the ones Mom always used to say reminded her of her childhood. I even wore the navy dress she gave me last Christmas. I looked in the mirror before heading out and whispered, just one evening. Maybe this time it'll feel like home. As I drove, memories tugged at me. Sunday dinners from when I was a teenager, the loud debates about politics, the way Ethan used to sit on my lap because he refused to eat unless I fed him, the way Mom used to touch my hair and say I had her curls. It used to mean something. I wanted it to still mean something. I wanted to be part of that again. I parked behind Diana's minivan and took a deep breath before stepping out. The house looked the same. Porch light flickering slightly, the smell of roast beef already wafting through the open window. I rang the doorbell, heart a little lighter than it had been in weeks. I should have known better. The door creaked open before I could even knock again. Ethan, the oldest of Diana's boys, gave me a brief glance before darting back toward the living room, where a video game's chaotic sound effects echoed. No hi, no hug, just background noise in a house that once felt like my own. I stepped inside with my wine and lemon tarts, my smile still intact but already faltering. Hey, there she is. Mom's voice rang out from the kitchen, sing-songy but distracted. I followed the scent of garlic and rosemary, expecting at least a small hug, but she was elbow-deep in mashed potatoes, waving a wooden spoon in the air as if that counted as a welcome. Could you set the table, sweetie? The boys have been driving me up the wall. I swear, your sister doesn't discipline them anymore. No, how have you been? No, tell me about work. Just a task. An errand. I placed the wine on the counter beside her and forced a cheery tone. Of course. Smells amazing in here. She smiled at the compliment but didn't look at me. Oh, and set the kids' table too. We've got a full house tonight. I walked into the dining room only to stop mid-step. The main table, long, polished, set with the good plates and candles, was nearly full. My parents, Diana and Tom, his parents, even their family friend Mr. Lowell, who hadn't been to dinner in years, had a seat. The only spot not set was the one I'd assumed would be mine. I looked around and spotted a smaller folding table set up in the corner of the room, Plastic chairs, paper napkins, mismatched cups. The kids' table. That's where they wanted me. I stared at it for a full 5 seconds, waiting for someone to laugh, to say it was a mistake, to hand me a proper chair. No one did. Diana breezed in behind me, setting down a tray of vegetables. "Hey Maya. So glad you could make it. Oh, can you help pour the juice for the little guys?" Still frozen in place, I mumbled, "Sure," and turned toward the kitchen again, my hands trembling just enough that I prayed no one noticed. As I poured the juice, I heard Mom say from behind me, "You don't mind sitting with the boys, do you? It's just, well, with the couples and all, the big table got tight." With the couples and all. That was the justification. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask if they really didn't see the problem with asking their 29-year-old daughter, who drove across town, who brought wine, who baked dessert, to sit with a group of under 10s while everyone else clinked glasses at the adult table. But I didn't. I just nodded. Dinner started. Conversation at the big table was lively, filled with stories about Ethan's soccer game, Diana's latest PTA drama, Tom's work promotion. I caught maybe one glance from Dad. No one asked me about my life. Not once. At the kids' table, Logan accidentally knocked over his juice, soaking my lap. Mason was yelling about how broccoli was a punishment food. Ethan kept glancing back at the adults, clearly annoyed to be seated with the babies. I didn't blame him. I felt the same. When I got up to grab paper towels, I passed by the adult table. Just as I reached the sideboard, I heard Mom chuckle. "You know, I always thought Maya would settle down first. She was such a clingy little thing. Guess career girls don't have time for husbands." There was the punchline to the unspoken joke. My stomach twisted. I cleaned the spill and returned to my seat in silence. At one point, Tom handed me his empty wine glass, asking if I could grab another bottle from the kitchen, "Since you're up." I did. Because what else could I do? When dessert time came, I slid my lemon tarts onto the side table and tried to smile as the kids cheered. But no one at the adult table touched them. Not even Mom. She brought out a store-bought apple pie and served it proudly. "Easier for the older folks to digest," she explained while slicing. No one mentioned my tarts again. I sat there with a paper plate sticky with juice and crumbs, trying to ignore the lump in my throat. The laughter from the big table roared like static in my ears, and in that moment something cracked inside me. Not a dramatic explosion, just a quiet shift. The kind that comes when you realize you're not part of the photo anymore. You're the one taking it. After dinner, everyone migrated to the living room. The adults flopped onto couches and armchairs, wine glasses refilled, laughter echoing through the house. The kids were corralled onto the carpet, battling over who got the Xbox controller first. I stood awkwardly in the dining room, clearing plates, my lemon tarts still untouched on the sideboard. I stacked paper napkins, wiped down the plastic table, trying not to glance at the half-eaten pie on the main table that had somehow gotten a second round of servings. As I placed the last fork into the dishwasher, I heard Mom call out, "Maya, sweetie, bring the tarts out now, would you?" My heart skipped. Finally. Maybe I was being too sensitive. Maybe they were just waiting for the right time. I carried the tray into the living room with both hands, careful not to spill the powdered sugar I'd dusted on top an hour before. "They're still warm," I said with a small smile. I placed them on the coffee table, expecting at least one ooh or yum. But no one moved. Ethan glanced at them, then turned back to his game. Diana was scrolling on her phone. Tom was mid-story about a coworker's meltdown. No one even looked at me. Mom finally said, "Oh, those look cute." She didn't reach for one. I sat on the arm of the couch, holding a tart for myself. The first bite was sharp and sweet, the crust just right. I had practiced that recipe twice last week just to make sure it was perfect. I looked around the room, willing someone to try one. No one did. Then Mom stood up and clapped her hands. "Okay everyone, let's get the kitchen back in order before it's too late. Maya, could you put away the rest of the tarts? The boys won't eat more sugar tonight." She turned to Diana. "Besides, your mother-in-law's blood sugar's been tricky lately, right?" Diana nodded without looking up. I picked up the tray in silence. As I turned toward the kitchen, I heard Mason whisper to Logan, "Mom says Aunt Maya's desserts always taste weird." They both giggled. I froze mid-step. My hands tightened around the tray. A wave of something, grief, maybe rage, washed over me, slow and cold. In the kitchen, I carefully wrapped the remaining tarts and placed them into the fridge. Then I stood there, staring into the fluorescent light, my heart thudding in my ears. I wasn't mad at the kids. They were just parroting what they heard. It was the ease with which it happened, the casual dismissal, the unspoken vote to simply pretend I wasn't trying. As I stood there, Mom entered, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "You've always been good at baking," she said. "Maybe you should open a little shop or something. You know, if that job of yours gets too stressful." I blinked. "You mean the job I worked 10 years to build a career in? The one where I manage a multi-million-dollar client portfolio?" Mom waved her hand as if brushing off a mosquito. "Of course, sweetie. It's just, you always loved little projects." I wanted to ask her why she always made me small. Why everything I did had to be repackaged as a hobby or a placeholder for a life I apparently wasn't living correctly. But I said nothing. Because she was already moving past me, heading back to the party, humming as if nothing had happened. As I stood alone in the kitchen, I looked at the tarts in the fridge, carefully arranged, meticulously made, and felt something give way in my chest. It was a small crack, almost imperceptible, but once it appeared, I knew it wouldn't close. Back in the living room, I stood near the edge of the crowd, the forgotten dessert in the fridge behind me, and tried to melt into the wallpaper. Dad had just turned the TV on for the kids, blaring some animated movie none of them were paying attention to. Mom was chatting with Diana and Tom about refinancing options, something about how interest rates were about to spike. I sat on the arm of the love seat, one leg curled beneath me, sipping what was left of my wine. Just a few more hours, I told myself. Then I could leave. Then I could go home, soak in a bath, and pretend this evening had been anything but a painful rerun of every dinner I'd been part of for the past 10 years. That's when it happened. Diana laughed, loud and bright, then turned to Mom with a grin. "Oh, did I tell you? Maya's thinking of buying a new car. And she just bought that huge sofa set for her apartment last month, remember?" Mom's eyebrows rose. "A new car? Must be nice." Dad, who'd been mostly quiet until then, snorted. "Guess she's still sitting on all that hospital money from when I had that stroke 2 years ago. You kept the receipts, didn't you, Maya?" I blinked, unsure if I heard him right. "You mean the medical bills I paid?" He nodded as if it were obvious. "Yeah. I mean, we gave you all the documents. Figured you'd file it for tax or something, right? Or maybe keep the extra for rainy days. Looks like it's working out." A weird hollow noise filled my ears. Mom chimed in, "We should have kept a copy. I told you not to give her all the paperwork. Kids these days, too clever for their own good." Clever. That word struck me like a slap. I opened my mouth to speak. What I didn't know, but Diana cut in with a chuckle. "Come on, Mom, Maya wouldn't scam you guys. She probably just managed her money better. No wedding expenses, no tuition bills." They all laughed. Even Dad smiled. Something inside me ruptured. "Just to be clear," I said slowly, my voice too calm, "you think I used Dad's stroke as a financial opportunity?" The room quieted for a beat, like they hadn't really considered how it sounded when said out loud. Dad raised his hands. "No one's accusing you, honey. We're just saying, you've had a lot of help. From us. From circumstances. Help. I paid $17,400 in hospital bills that year. I maxed out my credit card to cover Dad's medication when their insurance lapsed. I postponed a promotion at work to stay in town and drive them to physical therapy appointments. I didn't take a vacation for 2 years. Fisher, help." Mom shifted in her seat. "You're sensitive tonight, Maya. You always get this way when we talk money." I forced a laugh. "Maybe because every time we do, you make it sound like I owe you rent for existing." Diana stiffened. "Geez, Maya, no one said that. We're just surprised, that's all. New car, expensive furniture. I bought a used Honda and a couch on clearance." "Well," she said, eyes narrowing, "you have to admit, it's a bit flashy for someone who's always saying she's too broke to join family trips." My throat went dry. I didn't go to Cabo last year because I was paying off Dad's MRI. Silence. Tom cleared his throat. "Hey, let's not fight. It's the holidays." But it wasn't a fight. Not yet. It was a dissection. A slow unraveling of every invisible string I'd been holding onto. Every year I'd been called selfish for not visiting enough. Every time I was told I had it easier because I didn't have kids. Every moment I swallowed my pride to make sure they had what they needed, only to be reduced now to someone clever enough to pocket their crisis. I looked around the room, half expecting someone, anyone, to stand up for me. No one did. I stood. I could feel the burn behind my eyes, the warning signs of tears I could not let fall in front of them. I think I need some air. Before anyone could stop me, I slipped out the back door into the cold. The wind hit my face like truth. On the porch, I sat on the top step, hands clenched around my knees, trying to process what just happened. I stared at the dark sky and wondered how a family could know everything about you, your birthdays, your allergies, your favorite childhood song, and still not see you. My phone buzzed. A message from Ethan. Can you bring your Nintendo next time? Next time. I let the screen go dark. Took me 10 minutes to go back inside. 10 long minutes of steady breathing, clenched fists, and a silent promise to myself. Don't cry. Don't give them that. When I re-entered the house, most of the noise had moved into the kitchen. Plates were being scraped, leftovers packed, laughter simmering back down into that polite end-of-night murmur. I slipped past them all and headed toward the front hall where I'd left my coat. But Dad spotted me before I could grab it. "There you are," he said, stepping into the hallway and gesturing for me to follow. "Can I talk to you for a sec?" I hesitated. Every instinct told me to leave. But something in his tone, not soft but rehearsed, stopped me. I followed him into the den. It was quieter here. The old family computer sat in the corner, the beige tower humming faintly. Shelves of outdated encyclopedias lined the wall. It smelled like dust and history and disapproval. Dad closed the door halfway. "Look, I wanted to run something by you privately. Figured it was better this way." I nodded slowly. "Okay." He sat in the chair by the bookshelf, elbows on his knees. "Your mom and I have been talking. You know, we're both retired now, and with everything getting more expensive, we've had to reassess a few things." I felt my stomach tighten. "All right. You've been coming over for dinner pretty regularly, every other week, sometimes more, and it's great. We love seeing you." The pause. The soft inhale before the hit. "But dinners aren't cheap, Maya. Between groceries, electricity, water, everything, it adds up. And with how things are, we think it's fair to ask for a little help. Not much. Maybe $200 a month? Just a small contribution to keep things running." I blinked. My mind couldn't quite catch up with the words. "Wait, you're asking me to pay rent? For coming over to dinner?" He looked mildly uncomfortable, like he knew how it sounded but believed it anyway. "Not rent exactly. Just support. You eat here. You stay late. Sometimes you take leftovers. It's not about the money. It's about fairness." Fairness. That word again. The same word they used when I paid for Dad's medication. When I helped Diana with her boys' school fees. When I skipped a vacation to cover their plumbing bill. Fairness. I stared at him. "Do you ask Diana and Tom for $200? They've got kids," he said, as if that explained everything. "And I have bills. I have a life." He nodded. "Of course you do. But you're doing well now. Your job pays well. You don't have dependents. It's not a punishment, Maya. It's just a way for everyone to carry a little weight." I sat down slowly, the couch groaning beneath me. My voice came out quieter than I expected. "You're asking me to pay to be part of this family." "No, we're not," he insisted. "We're just saying, don't you think it's time you gave back a little?" "I've been giving," I said, sharper now. "You just haven't been looking." He raised a brow like he didn't understand what I meant. I didn't elaborate. Instead, I stood up and walked to the bookshelf, my fingers trailing the worn spines. These were the books I used to pull down for homework help. The chair he was sitting in, I used to curl up there on sick days, reading while Mom brought me tea. This was a room built from years of care and memory, and now it felt foreign. Transactional. I turned to him. "You know what? Sure. I'll think about it." He looked relieved. "Great. Just think it over. No rush." But there was no thinking left to do. The decision had already made itself. It was there, in the quiet way he justified it, in the absence of apology, in the casual expectation that I'd just say yes, like I always did. As I left the den and walked past the kitchen, Mom called out, "Don't forget the Tupperware in the fridge." I didn't answer. In the car, I sat in silence for a long time before turning the key in the ignition. My hands were steady. My mind surprisingly clear. $200. That was the price of being their daughter now. I didn't sleep much that night. I sat at my kitchen table long after midnight, the lemon tarts untouched in the fridge, my phone buzzing with 2 unread messages from Mom. Something about leftovers, something about don't take it the wrong way. I didn't answer. Instead, I pulled out a small folder from the bottom drawer of my desk. Inside, copies of every bank transfer, every hospital bill, every school fee I'd covered for the past 5 years. I hadn't planned on ever showing them, but maybe I always knew this moment would come. 2 days passed. Then Thursday night came, and with it an invitation. Family game night. Diana's idea, apparently. A chance to reset, she said in the group text. We're still family, right? Still family. As if what happened wasn't betrayal, just awkward phrasing. I replied, I'll be there. And I was. I showed up on time, dressed in neutral colors, hair tied back like I used to in college. Calm. Unassuming. Forgettable until I wasn't. The house was full again. Kids running through the hallway. Tom fiddling with the TV. Mom setting out snacks like nothing had happened. Dad was already pouring drinks when I walked in. You made it, he said like he was pleasantly surprised. Glad you're here. I smiled politely. I brought something. He raised an eyebrow. I lifted my phone and hit play. At first it was just voices. Practically distant. But then came Mom's unmistakable tone from 3 months earlier, speaking to Diana on a speakerphone call I'd accidentally overheard and, on impulse, recorded. If it weren't for Maya paying off that credit card mess last year, Tom would have had to pull out of the business. He bailed you out. But don't mention it to her. You know how she is, gets awkward when praised. Then Diana's voice. Yeah, she always wants to be the quiet hero. Whatever. Honestly, I think she just does it to feel important. Pause. Then laughter. From both of them. As the audio ended, the living room fell into stunned silence. I tucked the phone into my pocket. No one moved. Tom looked confused. The kids were thankfully still in the other room. Diana's mouth opened, but nothing came out. I turned to Mom. You remember that call? Her face was pale. Maya, that wasn't meant. I know. It never is. None of it's ever meant to hurt. Not sitting me with the kids. Not laughing about how I probably faked busyness last Christmas. Not accusing me of skimming money from Dad's hospital bills. But it all lands the same, doesn't it? Still no one spoke. So I reached into my bag and pulled out the folder. Set it on the coffee table like it was the final card in a poker game. Opened it slowly. These, I said, are copies of every financial contribution I've made to this family since I turned 24. That's when you asked me to co-sign Diana's mortgage. I didn't, by the way, but I did pay the closing costs when her lender backed out last minute. I flipped the page. This is the transfer for Dad's hospital bill. $8,600, paid directly to St. Mark's. Here's the follow-up for the MRI. Here's the plumber invoice from the burst pipe last winter. And this is the tutoring fund I set up for Ethan when his grades slipped. Quietly. Without a word. Mom finally found her voice. Maya, we didn't mean. Stop saying that. I looked at her, then at Dad. You want $200 a month? Fine. I'll send it to you. After you reimburse me the $33,748 I've already given. Itemized. With receipts. Dad leaned forward, voice tense. That's not fair. I laughed, sharp and humorless. No, it's not. But neither was any of this. Diana stood, trying to play peacekeeper. You're making this too dramatic. We're family. Families have rough patches. No. Families have respect. Boundaries. They don't weaponize shame and call it concern. They don't treat one member like an ATM and the others like royalty. Silence again. But it was different this time. Heavy. Final. I grabbed my bag and stood. Mom whispered, You're really leaving? I nodded. This time, yeah. And I'm not coming back until someone calls me because they miss me, not because they need something. I walked out without looking back. In the driveway, I exhaled for the first time in days. The air was cold, but I felt lighter. Whole. Not angry. Not broken. Just done. As I drove away, my phone buzzed again. A new message in the family group chat from Diana. Was that really necessary? I deleted the thread. The drive home was silent. No music. No podcast. Just the soft hum of tires on asphalt and the faint throb behind my eyes, not from crying, but from holding it all in. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel victorious. I just felt free. For years I'd waited for my parents to see me the way I saw them. Flawed, yes, but worthy of love, of grace, of space to be human. I gave them room to grow, room to disappoint me. I gave them every version of myself they asked for. The dutiful daughter, the reliable sister, the quiet helper in the background. What I never gave myself was permission to walk away. Till now. When I got home, I didn't turn on the lights. I sat on my couch, the same one they'd mocked, and stared at the shadows on my ceiling. Then I laughed. Quietly but real. For the first time in years, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt earned. The next morning, I woke up to 12 missed calls. 3 from Mom. 2 from Diana. 1 from Dad. The rest from numbers I didn't recognize. Probably relatives being pulled into the fallout. I let them ring. I turned my phone face down and opened my laptop. I booked a one-way ticket to Kyoto. Japan had always been on my list. For years I postponed the trip because, what if Dad needs something? Or what if Diana's kids get sick again? Not this time. This time I chose me. I spent the day planning. Not just the trip, but the life I wanted to return to. I called my manager and scheduled the vacation time I'd been deferring for 3 years. I emailed my landlord to renew my lease. I bought a second bookshelf. That evening I pulled out my favorite candle, the one I never lit because it was too nice, and let it burn while I curled up with a novel. Halfway through chapter 3 I laughed again. Not because anything was funny, but because for once nothing was expected of me. No one needed a ride. No one was asking for money. I wasn't fixing anything. I wasn't the helper. I was just me. Before bed, I opened the fridge and saw the Tupperware of lemon tarts I'd brought home untouched. I took one out, bit into it, and closed my eyes. It was perfect. Sometimes the people who raised us can be the ones who keep us small. Not out of malice. Not always. Sometimes it's habit. Sometimes it's their fear of who you're becoming, and how it reflects what they never dared to be. Maya's story isn't about revenge. It's not even about money. It's about reclaiming your value when the people closest to you refuse to see it. There's a moment in every life where you stop asking to be invited in and start building your own table. For Maya, it came late, but it came loud enough that no one in that family will ever forget it. And maybe, just maybe, next time they call, it won't be because they need something. It'll be because they finally realized what they lost. So let me ask you, have you ever been the good one? The reliable one? The one they always count on, but never clap for? And more importantly, would you have walked away too? Yes or no? Let me know in the comments. If this story hit a little too close to home, you're not alone. And if you want more family drama, more emotional awakenings, and more stories that make you feel everything, you're exactly where you're meant to be. This is Outlaw Alley, where the quiet ones finally speak, where the helpers finally heal, where family drama gets real. Hit that subscribe button, turn on the bell, and don't miss the next story, because the next one might just be yours.